what are your first words after your race?
Speechless. Pretty lonely.
Speechless and speedless.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
George Russell finished 43 seconds behind his own teammate. Not a rival team, his teammate, a 19-year-old in his first full season. Russell started 5th, finished 4th. Antonelli started 1st, 1. The 43 seconds was not the story. The contract was. Sitting inside Russell's 2026 Mercedes deal is a clause that ties his entire future at the team to his performance this season. And with every race Antonelli wins, that clause gets heavier, the margin shrinks, the pressure compounds, and the man Toto Wolff once tried to replace Russell with is still watching from Red Bull. If you'd asked anyone watching the season opener in Australia, the picture looked clean. Russell won. Mercedes dominated. A veteran driver in a fast car with a team that publicly backed him for another decade. For 3 weeks, that held. They had no idea what was already happening inside Russell's contract after Miami. The 2026 Formula One season arrived with Mercedes as the car to beat, and for the first round at Albert Park, that belief felt earned. Russell took the win, Antonelli showed speed, and Toto Wolff had exactly what he wanted: 2 fast drivers pushing each other without tearing the team apart. What followed through China told a different story. Antonelli won the Chinese Grand Prix and took the sprint race too, and Wolff, trying to keep a lid on the growing hype, came out publicly and said it was too early to talk about a title fight. He had seen what happened when 2 Mercedes drivers started believing the championship was theirs to take. He had lived through Hamilton and Rosberg, and he was not going to let that happen again. By the time the field arrived in Miami for round 4, Antonelli had won 3 consecutive races, taken pole in all 3 of them, and built a 20-point lead over Russell in the Drivers' Championship. The teenager from Bologna had not just kept pace with his senior teammate, he had pulled away from him. Russell started 5th in Miami and finished 4th, which on paper looked like a damage limitation result. The number that actually mattered was 43. That was the gap in seconds between Russell at the flag and Antonelli, who won the race from pole for the 3rd time running. Russell described the weekend himself. The result could have been worse. The pace was really poor on my side. He called Miami clearly an outlier, pointing to the circuit's low-grip surface as something that worked against his smooth, precise driving style. His explanation was careful and measured, the kind of answer that sounds reasonable the first time and less convincing the second. Juan Pablo Montoya, the former F1 race winner turned pundit, did not find it convincing at all. Montoya said Russell had just laid down and taken it, and went further, publicly stating that the performance clause sitting inside Russell's contract was now messing with his mind. Not the car, not the circuit, the contract. Damon Hill, the 1996 world champion, agreed with the psychological angle. Hill's view was that the issue was not pace but personality and mindset, which is a quieter but considerably sharper criticism than anything about tire temperatures or ride height. Russell signed his new Mercedes deal in October 2025, and when he described it to The Telegraph, the clause at its center sounded like a position of strength. His exact words were, "It is something I haven't actually said publicly, but the deal is, if I'm performing throughout 2026, we have a specific clause that if I reach, we will automatically renew for 2027. He went further, telling reporters, "My seat for 2027 is in my hands." And he meant it as confidence, as control, as proof that Mercedes had committed to him long-term, provided he delivered. Here is what that clause actually means in practice. His 2026 seat is fully guaranteed, no conditions attached. His 2027 seat is not. It activates automatically if he hits specific performance targets during this season, and the exact targets have never been made public. They likely involve wins, or a points margin, or outperforming his teammate by a measurable degree. None of those things are happening right now. Wolff has never been subtle when he wants to send a message to his drivers, and in April 2026 he sent one that landed in headlines across every major F1 outlet. His words were precise. "The moment a driver feels like this is all about him, that's not the mindset that we would ever allow, except them in the team." And then, to make sure nobody missed the weight of it, he added, "I would rather have only one car driving." That is not team principle boilerplate. That is a man who watched Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg spend 3 years weaponizing their rivalry against each other and against the team, and who has spent the years since building a set of rules inside that team, built to prevent it from happening again. Wolff has said publicly that Mercedes learned, in his words, a lot over 10+ years in managing intra-team battles. His approach in 2026 is this: drivers can race freely, they can push each other, they can fight for wins. The moment either one puts himself above the team, the response will come, and it will not be gentle. To his credit, Wolff did not abandon Russell after Miami. He came out and defended him, telling reporters, "I've always said that George wouldn't be a Grand Prix winner if he wasn't a killer." These things, by the way he analyzes them, look at the data and come to his conclusions. It was a defense, but it was also framed as a reminder of what Russell needs to be, not a description of what he currently is. Before any of this, before Miami, before the contract clause, before Antonelli's 3-race streak, there was Max Verstappen. In mid-2025, Russell himself publicly acknowledged at the Austrian Grand Prix that Mercedes had been in conversations with Verstappen about a possible move. Wolff confirmed talks had taken place behind closed doors. Rob Smedley, the former Ferrari race engineer, said he would 100% replace Russell with Verstappen given the option. The message from outside the team was clear: Russell's place at Mercedes was not a given. Verstappen ultimately committed to staying at Red Bull in August 2025, and the threat dissolved. In March 2026, Wolff moved to close the chapter entirely, ruling out a Verstappen signing and saying Russell could remain at Mercedes for another decade. That statement was made before Miami, before the 43-second gap, before the alarm bells. By March 2026, separate reports were already circulating that Russell could still be replaced for 2027 if his performance did not meet the threshold. The Verstappen door was closed, the pressure from the clause was not. The Canadian Grand Prix takes place on May 22 to 24, 2026, at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal, and it has taken on a weight in this story that a regular round of the championship rarely carries. Russell won in Montreal in 2025 from pole position, beating Max Verstappen. He had taken consecutive poles at the circuit across 2024 and 2025, and Toto Wolff himself has described Montreal as one of Russell's strongest circuits. That context is precisely why David Croft of Sky Sports F1 named it as the weekend where the trajectory of Russell's season gets decided. Croft's words were direct: if George doesn't beat Kimi, on a track that he regards as one of his best, and Toto Wolff says is one of his best, then the alarm bells really start to ring. Antonelli also podiumed in Montreal in 2025, which means this is not a circuit where Russell can simply expect geography and history to bail him out. Mercedes are bringing car upgrades to Montreal. The pieces are in place for Russell to have his best weekend of 2026, and that is exactly what makes it so important. A win does not close a 20-point gap overnight, but it changes the conversation. It proves that Miami was the outlier Russell said it was. It puts pressure back on a teenager who, as of right now, is carrying himself with more composure than his experienced teammate. A second consecutive poor result, on a track where Russell has historically been dominant, does something else entirely. It shifts the question from, can Russell find his form, to, has something fundamentally changed? George Russell is 28 years old and driving the fastest car on the grid. He has a championship-contending machine, a team that publicly defends him, and a circuit coming up in 3 weeks where he has won before and where his team principal expects him to win again. He also has a contract clause he described as proof of his own confidence, which 2 former world champions now describe as a source of pressure that showed up on track in Miami. He has a 19-year-old teammate who has won 3 races in a row from 3 consecutive pole positions. And he has a team boss who has told the entire paddock, in plain language, that no driver is bigger than Mercedes. The question that opened this video was whether a clause meant to protect Russell's future is the very thing undermining it. Montreal will not answer that question completely, but it will make the answer considerably harder to avoid. That's all for today, guys. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe so you never miss out on Formula Girls.